6 months ago, I got probably one of the strangest emails that I've ever received. It was from Valve, and they were asking if I wanted to be one of the first people outside of Valve to get a Steam Deck in their hands. And I, of course, said yes, 1,000 times, yes. And 6 months later, I have a Nintendo Switch, I have an Xbox Series X, I have a PS5, I have a pretty decent gaming PC, but 9 times out of 10, when I go to play a video game, my first reach is for the Steam Deck. Last July, when pre-orders went live for the Steam Deck, I was actually live streaming Skyward Sword on my YouTube channel, and I was dividing my attention between Link's shenanigans and trying to fight all of the other nerds to get my place in line. I eventually secured a Q2 reservation spot, the only problem being I do a podcast all about the Steam Deck, and that was going to make content creation pretty difficult. Luckily, Valve sent me a review unit on February 24th, and 6 months later, these are my pros and cons for what has become my favorite way to play games. These are in no particular order, but the first one that I'm going to talk about is just the size of the gaming library on the Steam Deck. Valve has tons of games in their store, and even if the Steam Deck can't run all of them, because they have, I think at this point, over 30,000 games on the store, if you can run just a fraction of those, you've got a massive library of games to pull from. And if you want to know what your game library on Steam would look like on the Steam Deck, then check out checkmydeck.herokuapp.com. I'm currently sitting at 51% of my games are either verified or playable, according to Valve. And that doesn't take into account the number of not unsupported, but unknown games that they haven't tested yet, and they will probably just work. In fact, most of the games that are marked as unknown, that's a little gray question mark, if I've tried them, almost all of them have worked. However, maybe you're not a big PC gamer. Maybe you're coming to the Steam Deck from the world of consoles and you don't have a large library in Steam already. Well, I've got good news for you as well. The number of sales like on Green Man Gaming and Fanatical and Humble Bundle or Steam sales that are always happening is just absolutely staggering. And there's so many ways that you can save money buying games on Steam instead of buying them for a console. And then you also have the ability to take it with you. When Valve first announced the Steam Deck, the thing that I was most excited about was Steam input. I bought a Steam controller back in 2015 when they first came out, and I absolutely loved that controller, and it helped me understand what Steam input can do. So when we got to see the Steam Deck, and the fact that it was going to be built on top of Steam input, that made me understand that I was going to be able to configure my games to play the way that I wanted them to play, which means that if a developer has an unfriendly or uncomfortable button combination that they're expecting you to put in, you can completely customize the controls to best fit you, whether it's using the trackpads or flick stick or the grips on the back. Steam input is the key to what makes the Steam Deck absolutely amazing. Now, this next one, I probably will never take advantage of. I don't have any confidence in my ability to repair a piece of electronics. That stuff is for other people. But luckily, Valve thought of that, and they thought of those other people, of which many of you probably are. If there's something wrong with your Steam Deck, it is repairable. In fact, you can get the parts from iFixit officially, and they even give you guides, step-by-step guides on how to put everything back together once you've taken it apart. I think that's awesome. Now, if you're coming from the world of consoles like I was, there's something that you can do with the Steam Deck that you cannot do with a PlayStation, with an Xbox, or with a Nintendo Switch, and that's adjust the settings of your game. What I mean is you as the end user get to decide, do I want to go for more graphical fidelity or do I want to go for a higher frame rate? You get to make that decision, and the Steam Deck gives you this awesome overlay which tells you what's happening with the device when you're playing a game, so you can see exactly what changes that you've made in the game settings and how that's going to affect the actual gameplay experience afterwards. It's a fantastic tool that is one button push away. Over the years, I've bought quite a few emulation devices. These are small, low-power devices that you can throw an SD card full of ROMs and play some of your nostalgia-fueled retro games that you just absolutely adore from your childhood. And while these devices are fantastic, none of them come anywhere close to the Steam Deck. Could there be devices out there that are better than the Steam Deck for emulation? Sure, but I don't want to have multiple devices. So the Steam Deck covers my modern gaming and my retro gaming equally as good. And why would I want to have multiple devices when I can have just one that does it incredibly well? If you've seen any of my videos, I'm sure that you've probably heard me say before that the Steam Deck is the most comfortable gaming device that I've ever used. Once you get it in your hands, even though it's huge and it's heavy, when you have it in your hands, it is perfectly balanced. And Valve's human input and ergonomics teams did a fantastic job designing the layout of the controls for the Steam Deck. I don't think that there's a single thing that I would change about the layout of the controls on this, with one exception, and that would be the Steam button and the quick access buttons. I just wish that they had a raised edge around them so it was easier to feel them without looking down. And then probably the biggest pro for the Steam Deck is it is a portable PC. I can pick it up and go sit on the couch or play anywhere in my house, or pack it in a bag and go somewhere and play video games. I am no longer tethered to my desk when I want to play the latest PC games. And I think that that's really awesome and compelling. All right, so those are just some of the things that I like about the Steam Deck. Before we get to the cons, the things that I'm not a fan of with the Steam Deck, do me a favor and click that like button down below. Thank you. All right, let's start in with the cons. These are things that I'm not a fan of with the Steam Deck, although a lot of these things could change over time. If you go back to when I first grabbed the Steam Deck and compare that experience to what we have 6 months later, the difference is night and day. Valve is really hard at work updating this thing based on user feedback. So maybe some of these things won't be true by the time that you see this video, but let's start with those cons. Number one, battery life is the bane of existence for the Steam Deck. In fact, when it first came out, there were a lot of negative articles about the battery life. And sure, you can take the latest AAA game, load it up on the Steam Deck, and run it into the ground in about an hour and a half if you want to. You can really do that. But I think that most people, thanks to the tools that we have available to us, we can extend that battery life a lot more. And if you're not only playing the latest AAA high graphical fidelity games at the highest settings that the Steam Deck can run, you're going to get more than a couple hours of battery life. And I think that battery life is definitely an issue with the Steam Deck, but I don't know if I would change anything in order to get more battery life out of the Steam Deck, because it's all about trade-offs. I've heard a lot of people complain about the fan of the Steam Deck. I have kind of terrible hearing, and because of that, the fan has never bothered me. I don't know if I have the quote-unquote good fan or the bad fan. It does kick in when you're playing a game and you can hear it, but it never really bothered me. That being said, it's making noise, and that's a con. That's definitely something you want to be thinking about when you make that purchase. It's not going to be nearly as quiet as, say, a Nintendo Switch. Now for offline mode, this is definitely a problem for the Steam Deck, but it's not a Steam Deck problem. It's a portable PC problem. And the fact that Valve is running into this issue just says something about the industry as a whole. And the Steam Deck has an issue where if it doesn't have access to the internet, it might not let you play some games. So if you've never played a game before on the Steam Deck, you've installed it, throw the Steam Deck in your bag, go someplace, take it out, go to play it without an internet connection, it's going to say, hey, you got to be connected to the internet the first time that you launch this. And even some games that are single player games have third-party always online DRM, which prevent you from playing a game if you don't have access to the internet, no matter what, even if you go into offline mode. Now, Valve has said they're working on making offline mode better, but I don't know that this is a problem that Valve can fix. It's a problem that only convincing third parties not to do that always online DRM is something that only they can fix, and we have to convince them to fix that. The Steam Deck is not very portable. I mean, it feels great in the hands, and I wouldn't want it to be any smaller than it is. But once you take the Steam Deck and put it in its included case and try and put that in your backpack, boy, you are limited to what else you can bring with you. This thing is huge and it takes up lots of room. It's not super portable. That being said, it's about as portable as a laptop, and I think it's just a better form factor for video games. Now, this one is definitely something that Valve can do something about, and I think it's a fairly simple fix. And it surprises me that it's been 6 months without this fix. And this is the idea that you can't download games when the device is off. What I mean by that is if you are downloading something and you turn off the screen, the whole device shuts off and it stops downloading the game. It doesn't download it in the background. And when you are talking about a portable device, having it staying on in the background to download things would run the battery down. So I totally get why you wouldn't want to do that. That being said, if the device is plugged in and connected to the internet and currently downloading something, then just make it so that when I push the power button on the Steam Deck, it says, hey, do you want to sleep the device or sleep the display until your download is done? I think that would be a much better solution. And 6 months out, I'm surprised it's not there yet. The docking experience also leaves a lot to be desired. I suspect that's the reason why Valve has delayed the official Steam Deck docking station to not come out yet. When you hook it up to an external display, oh man, sometimes the UI of the Steam Deck turns into a slideshow, and some games turn into a slideshow. And I think it's because some games will not let you set the resolution the way that you want. Now, the solution for this, which Valve has gone with, is on a per game basis. You can go through the game and say, all right, I want this game to never display a resolution higher than X, which is great. But honestly, the whole thing should give me an option at the system level to never go higher than 720p when I dock this thing to a TV, because that's going to give me a more fluid experience both in the UI and when certain games tend to try and upscale everything to the highest possible amount. And of course, while I said that Valve has a huge library of games on Steam, some of those games just aren't going to work. They're either going to be unsupported because of DRM or because of anti-cheat software. So it's best to make sure that you look at the verified, playable, unsupported, or unknown status of a game that you're interested in. And as a added bonus, make sure that you check out ProtonDB for a little bit of extra information before you make a purchase for the Steam Deck. Speaking of which, if you do go to make a purchase for your Steam Deck, I recommend that you just go to steampowered.com and buy the game there, and then it'll just show up on your Steam Deck using the built-in store on the Steam Deck. Not a great experience in my opinion. And a con that's related to a pro that I mentioned earlier is Steam Input. Steam Input is fantastic, like I said earlier. However, it can be a bit convoluted. And even if you're using layouts that are developed by community members, you're going to have to at some point dive into the nuts and bolts of Steam Input and figure out how everything works for yourself. They try and explain it pretty well in the UI itself, but if you're ever looking for more information on how Steam Input works, make sure you check out the videos that I have here on my YouTube channel. Another con that's related to a pro, remember earlier I said that you have the power to determine if you want to go for performance or if you want to go for graphical fidelity. Well, if you're going to learn that stuff, then you're going to have to figure out how all of that stuff works. Steam gives you the tools, but that means you're going to have to go into a game and set the resolution and figure out if you want to have the shadows on high or low, or if you want to have anti-aliasing turned on. You've got to go through all of these steps in order to get your game working the best way that you want it. That's a lot of extra work, and a lot of people who are coming specifically from consoles, they're not going to want to do that. They're used to just hitting a button and playing a game and not having to worry about all that. So that's definitely a con when it comes to the Steam Deck. That's also a pro when it comes to the Steam Deck. So those are my pros and cons with the Steam Deck after 6 months. Let me know if there's any that I missed in the comment section down below. If you haven't seen my video about 5 things that every Steam Deck owner needs to know, check out this video right here. And if you want to know more about Steam Input, check out this video right here. Thanks for watching, everybody. If it's your first time here, please subscribe. From the Nerd Nest, I'm Bill.